have an Audi RS Q8 today, and I'd like to thank Audi South Orlando for providing me the car for the day. What is an Audi RS Q8? Well, if you've been living under a rock, let me explain this to you. So effectively, the Audi RS Q8 is where the Lamborghini Urus starts. This costs about $100,000 less than the Urus. Uses the same engine, essentially built on the same platform. Lamborghini does do a few tweaks here and there. Obviously, the cars do look quite different, but Lamborghini, the styling is somewhat reminiscent of the Lamborghini Urus. So what do we have here? Again, we've got the Volkswagen Audi Group 4.0 V8, made it to a ZF 8-speed transmission, which is essentially the exact same recipe that is on the Bentley Bentayga, this car, the Lamborghini Urus, and the Porsche Cayenne. So we've got all sorts of varying states of tune, suspension calibration. There's really a lot going on here, and if you start to look at all these cars, you really have to dive deep and say, well, what do they all offer that's different? Well, obviously the Bentley is pure prestige, it's pure luxury. The Porsche is very, very sporty. It's the sportiest, arguably, of the group. The Lamborghini and the Audi are somewhere in the middle, with Lamborghini emphasizing a bit more sport as opposed to luxury. Where does this fit in? Would you buy an Audi RS Q8 and save yourself $100,000 over its corporate sibling? Well, that's what I want to find out. I've driven a Lamborghini Urus in the past before, and I've really been curious to drive one of these. And so let's kick things off with looks. Now, obviously, I think the Urus is a really good looking car. Let's take a look over here. The profile of the Audi RS Q8, or a Q8 in general, it's very familiar. This profile shape is very familiar to anybody who's looked at Audis before, who's owned an Audi before. Very flat belt line. Let's take a look closer over here. Soft closed doors. The roof line isn't quite as raked back as an Urus, so you've actually got more headroom in the back seat of this car, which is a plus. This is where the RS Q8 starts to differentiate itself from a Lamborghini Urus. It's a bit more practical. It's got, I believe it's got a little bit more luggage space as well. Air suspension. Car sits lower than your typical car would. Right now, I've actually got this car in dynamic mode, or RS mode as well, where the car lowers itself from its traditional ride height. Let's come around the back over here. Let's pop the trunk. There is a fair bit of room back there. This is a very spacious trunk over here. There's a lot of storage capacity. You've got this little visor that divides if you want to kind of hide some goods in the trunk over here. Look up here. Take a look over here. You've got a little privacy net as well. This can be removed if you so choose. I do think this is actually a really good looking car. Every time I see an Q8 on the road, especially an RS Q8, there's a lot of aggressive elements to this car that I like. For example, the RS Oval pipes. The oval exhaust tips are an RS staple. I do like the contrast brushed aluminum over here, or brushed look aluminum, because that's plastic. It's not real aluminum. It's just something that's made to look like it. Let's come around over here. We've got some fake vents. These are not functional, but they add a little bit of a sporty flair to the car. 295 rear end tires, 23-inch wheels, carbon ceramic brakes, blue calipers. This is actually an interesting color combo. This is Matador Red with brown leather. I'm really a fan of this combination. I particularly like brown leather interiors as well. We'll get to that in a second. I do like the carbon ceramics. I think they look really nice. The blue on the red is an odd combination at first, but you look at it, I personally find it quite tasteful. You still have, as in many other RS or S models, you have these polished, again, plastic, but polished mirror caps over here. And then, of course, the front end is, I think, the most distinct aspect of any RS car, and it's always going to be these bumper accents that run all the way around, the protruding front lip, again, this polished look, giant, all black grille. You have the RS badging over here. It's a very menacing looking car. you would know this is something special. This isn't your typical Q8. I think the styling of this car is more imposing, especially when you compare it to something like a BMW X5M. This just looks better. It looks a little bit more menacing, more aggressive. It's very clear that this is the higher echelon, or the highest echelon, of an Audi Q8. So again, as I had mentioned earlier, 4-liter V8 from the VAG group. This one makes 591 horsepower, 590 pound-feet of torque. Very, very healthy, very stout. And now it's time to check out the interior. So inside the interior of an Audi RS Q8, if you've been in the interior of any Audi, starting with an A6, A7, you've been in the interior of this car. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is still a very nice interior, but this is a 6-figure car. I will say this though, I prefer the interior of this car over the interior of the Lamborghini Urus. Reason being, it's just a lot cleaner over here. You don't have all this crazy Lamborghini Urus switchgear over here. It's just a more concise, cleaner, smoother looking center console. This cluster over here, it's very traditional, very simple Audi. It's a bit more RS-ified if you look at these gauges, and you can make the gauges look like this as well, or like that. And then you've also got, let's see if you can see that. There, you've got the heads-up display that appears as well when you hit the RS mode. You can toggle this screen with the steering wheel right here, these steering wheel buttons. You can go into the audio, Bluetooth, nav screen. If you prefer, you can make the nav screen the entire display. You can make your Bluetooth the entire display, phone, and then some general car information. This is a highly configurable interior. See that? You've got your power and torque outputs over there, so you can have that on when you're driving the car. I personally don't need any of that. Relatively simple steering wheel. I mean, everything's pretty self-explanatory. Track selection, audio, Bluetooth, voice assistant, and then again your options to control this display over here. This 2-screen thing over here might confuse some people if they're new to dual screen cars such as this. Otherwise, if you're coming from like a new Chrysler, let's say, or a new Jeep product, or Grand Wagoneer, for example, you might actually be familiar with some of this stuff. It's not the same, but it functions very similarly. For example, you have shortcuts where you can do one of these instead of having to press into every single time to have an input. So you can do the same thing here. You've got cooled seats, heated seats, and what I've done here is, you might notice that I'm not pushing into the screen, I'm gently touching the screen. You have the option in the Audis of either or. So if you want haptic feedback, where you actually physically have to push on the screen a little bit more, you can enable that. If you want soft feedback with a light sound, such as what I'm doing right now, if you just want it to be a kind of a traditional capacitive tablet, essentially, you can do that as well. So I prefer gently pressing the buttons and not poking my fingers into the screen like this. It just seems a little weird and a little counterintuitive compared to what we're used to these days with all our tech. Here you've got your drive select, dynamic, auto, comfort, all-road, off-road. These will also, because this has air suspension, so these will also lower or raise your ride height. So you can actually see it right here. You can adjust just how high you'd like the car to go. So I'm at the top red bar, so that means I want the car all the way up. And you can see it's raising at the moment. And we'll get some outside footage of that. It takes a little while. Here we have your main menu. Nothing too crazy. Everything's pretty standard. If you've been in a modern day car, all these settings and menus and options are going to be pretty familiar to you. Let's look at the glove box. It's pretty big, actually. It's a really good sized glove box. Unfortunately, what's not is this armrest. It's tiny. It's very, very small. It's wide, but you've got this wireless charger here, which unfortunately with my Samsung Galaxy did not work. It charged it for all of 2 seconds and then it disconnected. So as is always the case with literally every car I've driven, these do not work very well, so who cares. But yeah, very small. I'd probably, if there was an option, I would delete this. I'm not sure if you can remove this, and I'm not sure how much space it frees up, but I would do it. Then you've got USB-Cs over here. Look at that leather. That is a beautiful seat though, isn't it? Bang & Olufsen pops up from over there, Very, very nice audio, very configurable. I'm a big audio guy. If a car doesn't have very nice audio, I typically avoid it unless it's something like a sports car, then I understand why. Carbon fiber trim all around here, including here. I'm not sure if this is real carbon fiber. It doesn't exactly feel like it, but it's a little hard to tell because I can't pop this off and look in the back of it and analyze it or anything like that. But nonetheless, it looks good. It looks good. It looks nice. Perforated steering wheel. Love perforated steering wheels. They just grip better, feel nicer in my hand as well. And let's take a look at the back seat. In the back seat of the RS Q8, there is ample amounts of legroom. On top of that, this seat can actually slide back and forth. So you've got a handle over here. And as you can see, I've just slid this all the way forward and back. You've got some AC controls over here, nothing too crazy, and that's about the extent of it. This is not a Bentley Bentayga, so don't expect any fridges or anything like that. There's no champagne flutes back here. There's no fridge, nothing. But you still do have a beautiful, well-appointed interior, gorgeous seats, and plenty of legroom. And on top of that, plenty of headroom. So this is not a confined space. It's still very lovely to be back here. This is, at the end of the day, a very fast family car. Before we dive into this review, please like, share, and subscribe if you like cars like this. I've got more coming. I've got some really special stuff coming up as well. One car in particular that probably all of YouTube knows about. So please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. So we're going to give this car a bit of a rundown. See how well this pulls. Okay. Slow this car is not. It's only a tick slower in the quarter mile than the Lamborghini Urus, and naturally I'm going to be saying that a lot. This is a competitor of sorts to the Urus. It's just a lot cheaper because so much of this is related to the Lamborghini. I believe this is only a couple of miles per hour off trap speeds in the quarter mile. I believe also 0.2 slower in the quarter mile. Small numbers, you know, when it's all said and done, nothing really substantial. One of the biggest surprises to me is just how well this car handles. It's huge, and I think a lot of that has to do with the air suspension. The car really does get pretty low to the ground. Being so close to the ground, it really does lower the center of gravity that much. The other huge thing was the responsiveness of the steering wheel and how tight the chassis is. The front end and the rear end are very connected. You could throw the steering wheel left and right, and you don't feel a wobble coming from the rear end as you set the car back straight. In comfort mode, the car rides beautifully. It is an Audi. I mean, it should ride beautifully. I would expect nothing less. It's the dynamic stuff that I was more concerned about. Is dynamic just a word or just a term that they're using and they're throwing out just to kind of describe a bit of a bit more throttle response and a sharper suspension or a rougher suspension without any of the actual benefits? When the suspension stiffens up, steering gets better, and when the steering stiffens up, the response gets better. So the car's movements, when you throw it left and right, are immediately noticeably different, and by different I mean much better, much sharper, much more responsive. I am just pleasantly surprised just how good this thing is around a corner, and that was a very sharp corner. And yeah, I remember being extremely impressed by the BMW X5M. I was naturally impressed by the Lamborghini Urus because that should impress me for a $260,000 price tag. And this being half the cost, about $130 or so, is it half the car? No. It's 95% of a Lamborghini Urus. You're about 5 to 10% shy of just being there, but there's this really interesting aftermarket for these cars. And if you buy one, this is a pre-owned car. It's got 46,000 miles on it. Interior looks immaculate. It's been really well taken care of. But if you buy one of these and you start messing around with it a little bit, you've got an absolute monster on your hands. I mean, these cars are making 800 horsepower with a few mods. It's completely bonkers. So you don't necessarily need a Lamborghini Urus to handle or drive as well as a Lamborghini Urus. Now, as far as sound, this isn't the loudest car. You don't really hear much inside, and by sound I mean exhaust. It's just not that loud. On the outside, there's a soft limiter. You can't rev the car to hear it, but you start it up, you know it's a V8. Otherwise, just really not a whole lot going on as far as sound is concerned. All right, one more time. Yeah, I don't really know why you would need more horsepower than this in an SUV, but I'm also the type of person who would get more horsepower than this. So again, if you're comparing this to an Urus and you're asking yourself, is the Urus worth the $100,000 premium? The answer is no. Bottom line, it just isn't. I'm gonna go around a little corner here. Let's see how well this car copes with it. Man, yeah, this is impressive. Wow. This is a very, very athletic super SUV. I didn't think I'd call this a super SUV, but it is. It's got all the recipes of a super SUV. These upshifts though are a little slow. I don't get what's going on here. I hit the paddle and then it upshifts. And this is bizarre because it's a ZF. It shouldn't take that long to shift or respond to my inputs. It seems more like a response time issue. We're gonna go over some rumble strips. Take a little drive down here. Let's see how this car copes at 34 miles per hour. That wasn't too bad. I'm in comfort mode. I like the rumble strip test. This kind of gives me an idea of what it would behave like in New York City streets, or really in any major cities with poor roads. Say it one more time. This is 40 miles per hour. Pretty good. Don't forget, 23-inch wheels. We've got massive wheels on this car. So sharp, really sharp winding turn. When you start to really push this car, that's where you can tell the difference between the Urus and the RS Q8. That's right there. I just felt it. But again, what I just did, nobody's going to do. And again, I had mentioned this. You're not really buying a car like this to canyon carve. Also, I have to add, the carbon ceramic brakes stop this car exceptionally well. Normally, a lot of cars, or a lot of carbon ceramic brakes, they have this eager bite to them and they're not very comfortable or they're noisy, but they stop well. This car has none of that intrusive, uncomfortable sound or eagerness to bite. In fact, it's very, very gradual. I like the brake pedal feel, and it stops exceptionally well. And the reason why I say that is because while I had this cut, I had to stop at a red light, and this is a camera light, which required a bit of braking so that I don't get a ticket driving the dealership's car. A car like this is currently for sale now at Audi South Orlando. I have to give them a plug. They have loaned me this car for hours, and I cannot overlook that. They were so kind. They gave me the keys. They said, bring it back whenever you're done. Final thoughts on the Audi RS Q8. I had expectations. Now, they were lowered, actually. They were lowered expectations because I thought to myself, no way can this car be as good as a Lamborghini Urus because it costs $100,000 less than one. I mean, you can get these for about $130 new. You can go crazy with options. I wouldn't. I would get these seats, though. I definitely would get these seats, this color. And I love the Matador Red. So yeah, $130. And maybe if you fall into a nice deal, you can get it cheaper than that. for that price point, it's every bit as good as a Lamborghini Urus. And that makes you wonder, are people buying the Urus just because of the Lamborghini badge? I'm going to say yes, most definitely. This gives you every bit the experience. It's, you know, within 5 or 10% of being the exact same car. You've got the adaptive suspension, you know, that you can raise it, you can lower it, etc. Arguably, you have a nicer interior here because it's not cluttered with all the Lamborghini stuff. You know, the Anima controls and all this other switch gear that Lamborghini uses that really clutters up this center console in here. So that's a big plus to me. I feel like I'm in a cleaner looking interior. It doesn't sound as loud as the Lamborghini, but it goes almost every bit as quickly. It handles seemingly just as well. And let's face it, this is a family car. It's highly unlikely you're gonna go canyon carving in a car like this. And chances are, if you have the money for a car like this, you're probably likely to buy yourself a dedicated sports car to go canyon carving or to just go carve on a track or anything of that sort. So if it were up to me, save the 100 grand and maybe buy a used R8. If you like super SUVs, if you like the RS Q8, if you like the Lamborghini Urus, if you like cars that are giant and go really, really fast, please like, share, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.